All right, in this demonstration, we're going to try to make something that's a little bit like this video here on the left. Okay, so what that is a 1080 by 1080 video that could be for Instagram, and that would be something that could easily be scaled down, but we're going to make it at least 1080 by 1080. And I think it had the minimum is like 600 by 600 or something like that. But anyway, those are the current square format video sizes for Instagram at the time of the recording of this video. So if you want to double check and make sure that your sizes are correct in the future, because who knows, these things change a lot, you can go and double check by looking it up on the internet. Anyway, so what we've got to start with are just some basic beginning files. And so there's a folder that's called After Effects Demo Insta-Add starter files that I provided for you so that you can just begin. And let me just show you really quickly what those files consist of. So here's the skydiving clip, and it doesn't have any audio, and this is what you saw before. It's already been color corrected and so on. And it's already actually been edited in Premiere Pro so that it looks like this. If you wanted to see the original, basically it was much longer. It didn't fade to white and so on. So there might be some things in your own project whenever you're not doing the demo, but you're doing your own stuff, where you have to go and do a little bit of editing in Premiere Pro. The stuff that I did in Premiere Pro to get this clip from the really long version was so much easier to do in Premiere Pro than it was had I done it in After Effects, because of just the simplicity of the timeline and the differences of the timeline. Anyway, so, and it didn't take me very long to get it to this clip, all right, at all. All right, so that's the skydiving clip, and the idea behind this, this is an outdoor adventure company that hosts all sorts of different activities, and this was something that would be super adventurous, skydiving as an activity. And so that was something that I thought would be inspirational for a company like this. And so it's a fake company. This isn't real, but it gives you a pretty good idea of some of the kinds of exciting things that you might be able to get your users intrigued by or engaged with, and so on, to make them want to check out the business, right? And have more people follow that business, right? And so the idea is, whenever the skydiving, let's jump back to it. After getting this in here, getting the logo in, which is from a PSD file, it could have been from an Illustrator file. So if your logo is in an Illustrator file, that's fine. The idea was to animate that logo. You'll notice right off the bat, as these people are falling, it sort of creates a perfect space for an animated logo to come in with all this motion and falling and so on. And then the other thing too that happens is that it fades, does a crossfade right there, and then it kind of goes into this really brilliant bright sunlight and then fades out into white. And so you'll notice in the actual video that what I ended up doing was creating like a shatter effect right about here on the logo where it blows up, okay, so that we can have some kind of interesting thing happening in this transition from this scene to this scene. All right, that's something that I did in After Effects, not in Premiere. Okay, and the other thing you'll notice too is how this logo is animated. It is technically it's a flat piece of artwork. However, it's been turned into a 3D layer, and it's been given drop shadows and glows and things like that to give it the ability to stand out on top of this busy background, right? And and you'll see that the way that it is spinning into the space, it's in a 3D space, 2D object spinning into a 3D space, but it is technically made into a 3D object in After Effects, right? And then you'll see that it also has, sort of just for something that's a little bit more interesting, it also has it goes from white and then it goes into a blend mode effect, right? Where it starts to do blend mode before it hits this shatter effect where it blows up into the next scene, all right? And then the last thing that we did, right, was that I went ahead and decided to add audio to make it a little more engaging still yet more, right? And so there are lots of different ways we could have gone with this. We could have gone with, you know, like rock music or, you know, some other kind of beat. But wanted to go with something that was like simple and short, that had sort of like an upbeat, almost like a jazz beat, with a, you know, but also sort of mixed with something that could have been like from electronic samples. And just layered some different sounds. So here are the different sounds that created the soundtrack to this like 9 or 10 second piece. This is just a simple monster beat that was picked up from, I think it was freesound.org. This one was also picked up from freesound.org. It's just some synthesizer chords that are on a loop mode. And then there's also something to kind of come in with that shatter effect so that it breaks into this other space, this really strong wind sound, right, that you see whenever we get to right about here. And it's like the sound that you might hear whenever there's like wind, intense wind coming around your ears, right? And so the idea is that it sort of takes you from this, you know, ad space with this this beat music, right? And then all of a sudden it blasts you into the space of, you know, like putting you in the air with that sound, right? So that it kind of feels real, right? So these are some of the things that you can think about as you're doing this. And of course, whenever I built this, I didn't have all of this stuff storyboarded out, right? I started doing some of the piecing together in After Effects and then got some ideas while I was doing it. But I did start with the basic storyboard idea of having the logo with the skydiving, and I went ahead and I choreographed the skydiving pieces so that I had a transition from one scene to another scene, right? And then from there, I picked up the other stuff and worked with it live, okay? So that's kind of where we're going with this, right? Now, if you open After Effects, now this is the 2019 version. If you're watching this using an older version, I would recommend that you upgrade if you can, just because then it'll make sure that any of the features that I use are features that are available to you. If you are in a more recent version, like if you are watching this well after it's been recorded, then the features are going to be basically the same. But if there is something that's really different, you know, feel free to let me know. Okay, so now you could use this new project thing, right? And that's fine, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to close that. And then what we've got here is the default space that it's going to open up with. And if this isn't what you see, what you might see if you go up to Window, Workspace, and choose, yeah, it's not the default. You're going to choose default so that we all see the same thing. And then if you want to make sure that it's still definitely reset completely, you can go up to Window, Workspace, and then say Reset Default to Saved Layout. And so now we definitely all see the same thing, okay? So what you want to do is you could do either new composition from footage, so we could add that video. But the problem is, if you'll notice right here, just by looking at it, you can see that this video is not 1080 by 1080, right? It doesn't have a square dimension at all. And so I know that my target dimension is 1080 by 1080, so that's not what I want to do. The other thing too is that if you look at the logo PSD, it's not square either, right? And so I can't just automatically, you know, import one of these straight in by saying new composition from footage, because what it'll do is it'll automatically take it. Well, it's going to automatically want to take the dimensions and the resolution of the piece that I'm pulling in. Okay, so in this particular instance, we're just going to click on New Composition, and we're going to make a few changes here in this composition settings window. So I'll call this first composition, let's call it Spire, and I'll just say Insta 1080, yeah, 1080 by 1080. Okay, and that'll be the name of the composition. And I could also just call it Spire Ad or something like that. Whatever you want, right? It's easy. If you can even leave out, let's leave out Insta, let's just say Spire 1080 by 1080. And we're going to make sure that we've got the width here set to 1080 and the height to set to 1080. It might be something different on your screen. This was the last dimension that I created, so it's coming up as 1080 by 1080 for me, but you need to change it to that if you're following along with my files. And where we've got pixel aspect ratio, just make sure that square pixels, sorry, and it's 1:1 for the frame aspect ratio. Believe it or not, there is such a thing as a non-square pixel. But for most intents and purposes, you're always going to use square pixels. Frame rate is just leave it at 29.97. That's fine. Okay, and then all the rest of this is good. Leave it at full resolution. If you choose something lesser than that, then what it's going to do whenever it goes to create it is it's going to create it at half the resolution of your target, and that's not what you want. Later, you could go and render something out at a lesser resolution if you wanted to, but let's leave it at full for now. And you can choose the background color to be anything you want. We could choose it to be white if we wanted to. So you know, let's leave it at white. So I clicked on the eyedropper and then I moved my slider up, and we're going to leave it at white. You could do black, it really doesn't matter. Okay, but because mine's going to fade to white anyway, I might as well leave it at white. So click OK. All right, so now I've got this. All right, now I'm going to show you that I think, you know, for me, a lot of this extra information that's over here, it's very valuable, and you can always jump back and forth between different workspaces, but I find that this is a little bit too much stuff over here for me. I don't need to look at all of these things. So what I'm going to recommend is if you jump up here to Window, Workspace, and then go to Small Screen, I find that actually that helps me keep really focused on what I'm doing. Unless I know that I'm going to need certain kinds of panels quite frequently in some kinds of projects, like maybe I'll need the type project or the type panel a whole lot more, then that's something that I could go and I could also add. You know, I could come down here and ask to see like the character panel, for instance, and then it would show up here, and then I could leave it if I wanted, right? That's also fine. And you can also, by the way, create custom workspaces if you wanted. So that's an option too. If I click here, I can just say close panel and it goes away for me. I like to be able to see my effects and presets here, and later whenever we do effect controls, you'll see how beneficial it is to be able to expand this open pretty big. Okay, so in a previous tutorial, I went over all of these different panels. You'll see that as I click into different panels, it changes the focus of what I'm using right now. So that's the composition panel. And you'll notice that as soon as I created a new composition, what it did over here in my project panel is that it shows me my composition. That's all I've got in here right now. I don't actually have any assets imported. I just wanted to make something at 1080 by 1080, right? So that's what I've got. And you'll notice that there's nothing down here in my timeline or in my layers because I haven't pulled anything in yet. So in the next tutorial video, I'm going to show you how you can start to pull your assets in and get them into the timeline and so on.